Hello, Zineb.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for accepting our invitation to participate to this second episode of our webinar and podcast series that is named Echoes of Sahel. Do a quick introduction and maybe you can complete like regarding your experience and profile. You're fellow researcher at the Hudson Institute based in Washington. You're specialized on research regarding global power dynamics, superpower dynamics, especially on some specific zones like Africa and Sahel. So China and Russia and the US. Maybe you can give us a little bit more about your expertise and your work at the Hudson Institute before we start our series of questions. And I will also do a quick introduction again for our followers at the Global Governance and Sovereignty Foundation about also our works.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm based in Washington D.C. and I work at Hudson. I mainly specialize in analyzing what the Chinese and the Russians are doing in the region, as well as their collaboration with Iran. The main focus, given the nature of the work, is really U.S. foreign policy, U.S. interest in the region, and how all of that gets into a very complicated equation. But naturally, of course, because of because of how the Russians are working in the Sahel and in Africa in general, I've also been paying attention to that. The last 4 years, really, since especially since Russia's war on Ukraine started.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will lead your insights regarding a series of subjects regarding today's episode, and the main topic will be the position of the current U.S. administrations, and also we will do together a mapping and global analysis regarding the confrontation or collaboration regarding these different superpowers like China and Russia, but also regarding the strategic interest of the US in the region, specifically on the Sahel region that is rising and rising regarding its geopolitical importance, specifically on the current situation. Just quickly to do a reminder for our viewers and followers, the Global Governance and Sovereignty Foundation, we are a think tank, a foundation based in Rabat, Morocco, and we are specialized in redefining the notions of sovereignty and global governance through research, brief, also cross-sector collaboration, and we have a specific eye and view regarding Africa's position, Middle East, but with the Moroccan view regarding these global dynamics that we are talking about. So our main topic today will be new America, maybe recalibrated Africa strategy regarding this geopolitical change and landscapes, specifically on the continent, and the different moves of actors regarding the Sahel region that is growing in importance, like we said. Zina, maybe my first question will be, as the new administration, the Trump administration, took office in 2025, what do you think is the new America's strategic priorities in Africa, specifically on the region, especially particularly given the different change that happened in West African region and the Sahel over the past few years? Will we have like different approach and strategy, specifically regarding the first, let's see, Trump's mandate that was a little bit less focused on the continent? What do you think about this new dynamics regarding the new American administration and its relationship with Africa?
I think it's a very difficult question in the sense that that the Trump administration, I think this time has completely different visions of what it wants to achieve, and also what it wants to promote. And I think that when it comes to Africa, I wouldn't say that Africa is a top priority. I think the administration is laser focused right now on tackling China, on and getting a ceasefire, and getting negotiations with Putin on Ukraine, talking to Zelensky so that there are some sort of better agreements. They are also much involved, especially now with Trump, given the recent attack on Iran in the Middle East. For these reasons, the Africa question does not take the first rank. That being said, I do think that from a U.S. administration point of view, there is a recalibration of U.S. posture, in the sense that they've started with dismantling a lot of the aid assistance. They've started with also, what they've been doing on South Africa, how they are, also doing some sort of, it's not yet a reform, but there are already signals that the Africa Bureau, and anything related to that, especially on the consulates, etc., there wouldn't be much of them. But I do think that for the Trump administration, it's about how to be more effective. So I think Secretary Rubio, and how he did all the changes on the aid assistance, it was really in the to keep it was really for him a way, also for the Trump administration, a way to show that that the United States wants African partners, that they want to really empower African states, in the sense that in the sense that they want to have more bilateral relationships, and not through these multilateral agencies or associations, organizations. Good sign in the sense that it will help the United States have key partners through which it can collaborate on security, counterterrorism, and also on trade, and other related issues. But that being said, for example, right now, Massad Boulos, who is also a senior advisor to President Trump, is on a visit to North Africa. I think he visited Tunisia, Libya, and other places, and it was really more of a signal that they are paying attention. There's also the fact that the United States is very much involved in some sort of agreement, a peaceful agreement between Rwanda and DRC, which is also a sign that they are paying attention to these things. But given the nature of the problems the United States is facing when it comes to challenging, when it comes to really countering China and countering Russia, in the continent, the Africa becomes much part of a, I would say, a chessboard. It is one theater through which the United States will have to counter its adversaries. And I think this is a really big change, where Africa will play a much bigger role in redefining, I believe, great power competition. I mean, the fact that the Russians are operating in the Sahel, that they are actively working with African countries, especially to evade sanctions and have new security agreements. It's a way for Russia to promote itself, given basically the ecosystem it has been trying to create with China and Iran. It's a more of an anti-Western system, and I think that the United States is also very much paying attention to that. Of course, not not saying anything publicly because they are engaged in negotiations. But I think that this is where I think Africa stands for the Trump administration. There's also the fact that Trump received last week. I think President of Liberia, President of Mauritania, and others. And it was really a way to showcase that the administration is paying attention to these countries. It was very selective because it was West African countries. But just to reinforce my point that they are really not seeing Africa as a foreign policy priority, but more of part of a great chessboard to which they have to operate.
I see exactly. We can see that there is a balance, I think, to find because, like you said, if I understand well, the new U.S. administration is looking for local partners to be like key partners, especially on the security field, but also on trade. There is more and more also terrorism problem, specifically in the Sahel region. And in the same time, there is um, uh, guideline, I think, also from the new administration that they want to be less involved, specifically in terms of, like we saw, like cutting the USID policy or like less like helping and involvement, let's say, policy. What could be maybe the right balance and decisions regarding that. Specifically, like you said, that in terms of global competition, China is very present also in Africa and is the main, let's say, trade, at least on economic adversary for the US, but also more and more involvements in the Sahel region for the Russians. What could be the main, it's a global question, I will ask, strategy or guidelines to follow? Is it only at 100%, like take on consideration to have local partners? Like you said, we have seen that President Trump received 5 presidents that they all have this particularity. They are in West and Central Africa, but they are African Atlantic countries. They are like all Atlantic countries. So there is also this Atlantic maybe security to develop. What could be regarding your feedback and analysis could be the next steps regarding these partnerships? Because these kinds of partnership could be done, but there's the risk that it takes a little bit more of time. On the opposite, the also competitors, the global competitors of the US are already, like we said, in the field. What could be the good balance and maybe steps for the current administration to take from your
Yeah,
perspective?
I think it's the correct, I think, assessment that the U.S. United States in general. Actually, it started really with Biden as well. Taking a step back, not being as involved. Of course, they still prioritized foreign assistance and foreign aid. The Trump administration is not, for a very simple reason, that the Trump administration, I think, believes that a lot of the foreign aid has been politically weaponized as more of a political statements. The nature of the programs, the nature of the grants, and a lot of them, quite frankly, and go to, for example, helping countries build infrastructure that later on gets in the hands of China or Russia. I mean, it's also important to keep in mind that the United States has faced a big backlash from African countries, especially from Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and others that are backed by Russia. The United States had to leave 2 years ago, I think, the U.S. military airbase in Niger, which costed the United States $100 million to build. Uh, So there are a lot of these issues that have not been tackled yet in the sense of what can be done. And I think that what the Trump administration is trying to signal is that, well, what can be done in the in the best case scenario is to find local U.S. aligned partners, such as Morocco, actually, that who can project power, who can be a key for tackling illegal migration, because it has been weaponized by Putin. It's that are key in countering terrorism because of how much the jihadists are imploding and are expanding in the Sahel. Um, and I think this is the kind of formula that the Trump administration is trying to put together. Obviously, this will take a lot of time for a very simple reason. A lot of African countries have not been used to take the lead on security issues. The foreign aid, etc. Not that they're not useful. I mean, they're absolutely key in protecting, human life, and in protecting all the refugees are being displaced, but it does not solve they do not solve the problem. It keeps on delaying it, and you've seen that, for example, with Sudan. um where millions are being displaced. There are, of course, a lot of humanitarian assistance, etc. But the parties involved do not have to deal with the consequences of what they are pushing. And I think this is something that African countries will have to grasp. So I think that this is, I think, the only part where I think it's going to be a little bit slow on the African side, to be used to taking to like in a leadership position when it comes to certain issues. But that being said, I think it's also an opportunity, I believe, for African countries. They know the region, they know the continent, they know the parties involved, etc. And quite frankly, better solution there aren't better solutions than the ones that come up organically. And this is, I think, what the Trump administration is trying to do. Of course, are they going to be successful? That remains to be seen. But as I said, I think this is the kind of model they're trying to pursue. There is also a fact that the Trump administration is much more is taking a much more different approach than the Biden administration, or even the Obama administration, when it comes to its thinking. They are not in the business of engaging with hostile countries. In South Africa, they hosted the naval drills with Russia, China, and Iran. They've maintained a lot of their ties with China, as well as with Russia. They promote anti-U.S. Discourse. I mean, they've done everything. I mean, they've done a lot to show that they're not on the U.S. side. And of course, the United States today do take that the administration today does take that very seriously. And I think this is very key, in the sense that it's not like Trump administration one, where they would go around and say, "Oh, you have to join us against China or X, Y, and Z." But it's more that, "Oh, you actually showed that you're not aligned with us, and you have now to face the consequences of your non-alignment." And it is a much of a coercive approach, but it seems that even the South Africans are, because of that, reviewing their position. So it's going to work to some extent. It's going to take a lot of time, but I think that this is the vision they have.
I see. And like many other also decisions, very more pragmatic also regarding the approach with African countries. If we focus on the West African Sahel region, you've talked about Morocco as a key partners. We know, and that Morocco has positioned itself as a key regional power in the region, and is also promoting some specific initiatives like the African Atlantic Initiative, and also there is also some very important integration and economic integration projects like the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline, it's named the Africa Atlantic gas pipeline project. How does the new administration, the U.S. government, view Morocco's role as a potential partner and maybe as a stabilizing force, specifically in the Sahel region and West Africa, where there is more and more, still at least security also problems, but there is also some other economic issues. It's interesting to have more the perspective from the U.S. point of view regarding also this region. Do you have any insights regarding that? In the
Yeah. Yeah, I think that what is fascinating is that I think Morocco has been building the foundations for exactly this. And the fact that because the Atlantic African states type of agreements and cooperation, they've started way before the Trump administration. The fact that Morocco has, they've been, I think the foreign ministry has put together some sort of format to counter jihadist threats by sending imams, by educating Muslims and educating a lot of imams who are operating in mosques in West Africa that are very vulnerable to jihadist threats. So on the counterterrorism side, they've also, I mean, the cooperation and the intelligence cooperation that Morocco has with its European partners is really excellent on that. There's also the fact that Morocco, despite, for example, Mali being backed by Russia, I think from the Moroccan perspective is that it's still very important to engage with them because of the threats that the Sahel presents and will represent in the future. And they've been doing all of that while being a non-major NATO ally, and also being part of a lot of the discussions when it comes to security agreements. And finally, I mean, I do not know for the details of that, but it's very clear that Morocco, with its cooperation with other countries, whether it's Azerbaijan or Israel and others, that they're building Morocco is building its industrial military complex, so that Morocco can project power and go after its own interests. And I think these are, of course, the Morocco has been building the foundation so that it can be seen as a reliable partner in the region. And I think, of course, from a U.S. perspective, of course, Morocco is one of the oldest friends of the United States, the first country that recognized the United States. United States also supports Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara. The United States has multiple agreements with Morocco in that regard. And I think that, of course, I think it's very optimistic. There's a lot of optimism in how the friendship and also the partnership will flourish, precisely because the United States needs Morocco to maintain and to keep West Africa stable. It's very important. I believe the Chinese are operating there massively. Of course, I think Morocco has an open relationship with China, but it's still not to the point where the Chinese are the ones helping Morocco build the drones, etc. So it just means that the United States has a lot at stake to keep Morocco as a close partner. And for Morocco, it's the relationship with the United States is of course historical, etc. But also when you see what the Russians are doing in the Sahel and how the Chinese are taking over, how the Iranians are also they have been they have been putting together these Iran Africa summit. They've been visiting a lot of African countries. So I think that for Morocco, the relationship with the United States is absolutely key. And so I think it's more of a bilateral kind of agreements that we're going to see in the future. Um, I think the challenge, however, is really going to be the Sahel. I think because Al Qaeda and ISIS and other Janim and other adjacent groups are expanding, we might see more cooperation with the United States on that.
Definitely, definitely. And like you said, regarding the old and deep relationship between Morocco and US, I think indeed, and on some specific project, Morocco is a key partner, while also Morocco, and you said it also has a multipolar policy and sovereign, like have a good also relationship with the Sahelian countries, with also China, a bit neutral with Russia and West African country. But regarding, I think, the different strategic issues, they could be a great cooperation with the US, specifically on the security, thematics, but also on economic ones. I think more important relationships regarding the security sector, but also regarding the economic one, specifically maybe with this current administration, US administration. I have two economic or strategic projects in mind. The Royal Initiative for Atlantic African Access, which is a royal initiative provided by Morocco, specifically for the Sahelian countries to provide them an access to the sea through the port of Dakhla. And the idea is to give gateways, logistical, energetical, and others, to find also ways not only to find security solutions, but to find a global geopolitical solutions to the problems in the region. And I have in mind another one, which is also linked because it's on the African Atlantic part, which is the Nigeria, Morocco, African Atlantic gas pipeline that is going to be built between Nigeria and Morocco. We know that Nigeria has one of the most important gas reserve in the continent, and it's a very important project. And there were not only rumors, there were like statements that the US administration and economic operators will be interested in founding and in investing in these kinds of projects. The question is simple. Could this be project models for the US administration, economic operators to have this specific or like local involvement in the continent while having also other geopolitical priorities? I don't know how could this project could really interest from a strategic point of view the current US administration.
Well, I think unfortunately I do not know the details of the Niger, I mean the West African oil pipeline project. What I can say, however, um, is that the Trump administration is also in the business of making money with partners. And if there is an opportunity for U.S. companies to make money, then it will definitely be something that the Trump administration will explore. Um, but I think for this one, it's really Morocco that is taking the lead. Of course, I think they got some companies from the UAE and some other partners. And I think it's something similar that can be done with the United States. But so far, I see this as as a Moroccan-led project. And then the United States can be a partner. Um, uh, uh, if there are any opportunities for that. So far, I do not know where that stands, but I don't see that as an impossible task. It might happen.
So a very pragmatic approach, I think, like as usual. But like you said, yeah, it's like Morocco taking the lead on this specific project. But if there is like a return on investment for the U.S. actors and U.S. specifically economic actors, that could be interesting for them. Um, maybe now specific questions regarding the security challenges in the region, specifically in the Sahel. There is a terrorism and jihadist problem there. Like you said, there's also other involvements like Iran involvement there. Um, Regarding also the proofs that they backed the Polisario front there also. There is also the Sahelian countries in that are involved in a new approach for them. I think for these countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they want to be more sovereign and autonomous, but it means on some other way that they are like closer in reality, have moved closer to Russia. The US left Niger. Um, what could be the security strategy and approach? You said that the US can rely or the partnership with like local and actors like Morocco, others. But the problem is that, unfortunately, also the jihadism there and terrorism is spreading, and the risk nowadays is that it could spread from the Sahel region to the coastlines. We see already that there are terrorist attacks in Benin, in West African and countries that are on the Atlantic Ocean. What could be the pragmatic approach for the US administration? Again, we're talking about always the balance of getting less involved, but there is also a reality regarding the situation and a danger that there could be a new global new region that is totally spread by jihadist groups, not only what happened in Middle East in the last years, but there will be also in Sahelian and West African countries. What could be really the pragmatic approach for the US then regarding what's happening? Because France left, the US left like Niger. There's more relationship with Russia, but not very effective, maybe on some security issues regarding the fight of some jihadist group. Regarding this important matter, I don't think the US can stay away and say that African countries, of course, they have to handle the problem, but they might need some help doing it. What could be, maybe if I ask the question, what could be not the right, but the most effective approach for the US administration regarding this specific matter?
It's a very complicated question for three reasons. The first one is that the Trump administration still has not settled the dust with Russia. We still do not know really where the United States stands on the Russia question. There's still I mean, there's always the sanctions and the package to contain Russia. They've been very active in supporting Ukraine, especially recently, actually. But we don't know yet if the United States is in the business of actively countering the Russians. Why? Because they are part of the problem. They definitely have made the situation worse because they gave to these countries security guarantees. They know they cannot when they know they cannot deliver because you need a framework, you need you need a bigger structure. You need cooperation with a lot of countries in the region so that you can conduct a proper counter-terrorist organization, counter-terrorist operation. And the Russians are simply not doing that. So until we actually know where the United States stands with Russia, and on Russia, then we can have a better vision of what the United States might and might not do. Why? Because it's clear that the Russians are in the Sahel because they are weakening NATO. People forget that NATO is not just on the Eastern Front. There's also a Southern Front. And the Southern Front is key because it's about migration, it's about access to strategic choke points, especially in the Mediterranean. And it's key because it's about terrorism. And the Russians are disrupting NATO South operations by being there. And of course, they're very ambitious. This is why they are engaging with talks with West African countries. So this is, I think, the first part that we don't know yet. It might get worse actually, with given how Putin is dragging on the negotiations. But it's more of a wait and see situation. Second, because I think the Trump administration does take very seriously counterterrorism and countering Salafi jihadi threats. I think the first months the Trump administration did conduct strikes on Somalia against terrorist groups. They've been paying attention a lot to the Horn because they do not want the situation to get worse, given how the Houthis are already blocking the Red Sea. So I think there is that. There might be something similar, but I think that it's definitely possible. Third, and this is a real problem where Morocco alone cannot do a lot, because of the type of resources that are needed. I think Morocco can project influence, can have talks, but as long as the Russians are there, I think I think Morocco is already doing a lot on countering illegal migration and the spread of jihadism to North Africa. But for that, the Europeans should also get involved. And it's going to be very, very hard because they have been kicked out. And there is a huge anti-European, anti-Western sentiment in the region that makes it absolutely hard for European countries, especially Southern European countries, to stabilize the situation. The Italians are involved in Libya, and they are in talks with Algeria because of the gas, etc. But I think that that the absence of Europe is also going to be a problem. But here's what I see as opportunity, actually. Nature abhors vacuum, and Turkey has been much more involved in the region. Of course, they have their own national interest for doing so. It's very important for Turkey to secure access to the Mediterranean. That's why they are in Libya, etc. But it's also great for Turkish business, and it's great for Turkish military. For Turkish military industry, it's good on also the level of soft power, of influence, and Turkey has been a lot more involved in talks with a lot of these countries. I don't see Turkey yet playing the counter-terror position or taking those positions, but especially not in West Africa because it's logistically very hard, and they're also very much stuck now, really, in Syria. But I think on the long run, there will be much more Turkish presence, and because Turkey is part of NATO, I think there's a possibility there where they can play a role. But so far, I think Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal, and other much more stable countries in West Africa will be the ones who will need to collaborate under the threat. I think Mauritania has been doing a fantastic job lately. I mean, the last decade, really, countering jihadism. But more resources will be needed for a greater operation to happen.
Definitely, definitely. Specifically for you're right to raise the Turkish questions in Africa because they are more and more present, indeed, specifically on the business field, in also development agencies in West Africa, but also, like you said, for now, it's only selling weapons, specifically drones. I think they sell their Bayraktar drones to Mali. But let's see if, yeah, it's more complicated logistically, but they have already presence in Libya. As for different actors, indeed, Mauritania has a great policy regarding the counterterrorism, and they have stopped the spread of jihadism, I think, since 2011, when the current president was in charge in the army of the security. Do you see maybe other actors in the region if uh, Europeans, like we said, like well, Turkey is getting more involved for now in the business field and soft power, a little bit more in the military industry. Europeans is more and more complicated, but in the specific region, West Africa, you've talked about Morocco, Senegal, Mauritania. Is there any other actors that could get more and more involved? Don't know. I'm thinking about Nigeria. Can we imagine also an alliance to stop this spread regarding the of terrorism regarding the issues in the region, or it will need definitely a more pragmatic approach with still uh, uh, global involvement of other powers in any case.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation because of course Nigeria, I mean they do struggle because they are right next to Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso, which is exactly the where it's all imploding. But the problem though is that Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, Cote d'Ivoire, Liberia, all of these countries, they actually lack um, the resources to conduct huge counterterrorist operations. So of course there will be maybe a cooperation on intelligence sharing, on tracking where these jihadists are going. Um, but on the ground, something much more practical, well, I only see that happening if Morocco doubles down on the spending for that, and also if United States and some others, especially Europe, get more involved on the finance side. Because the dilemma here is that the West, I mean, the United States, really led by the United States and Europe, they're struggling because they know that they have to get involved and they have to go and counter these threats, but they've tried it before and it failed. And if they come back, they're going to face a huge backlash. So the only option left is to actually finance some actors, either Morocco, or also finance all of them, or give them enough, share with them intel, etc., and really work through U.S. allies and partners. And it's the only way to do it because a real exposure to the area and the theater of conflict is going to hurt the United States and other European countries. It's a very tricky situation, but I think that I don't see an alliance per se. It will be the problem with these alliances is that at the end of the day, one actor who has actual military power that can do the work. Others, they can share intel, etc., but it will remain a little bit more symbolic. So I think what will be best is more of a framework on how to do it that is much more focused on deliverables. So that's how I see it so far. The issue though is I think time is really running out. I think the clock is really ticking on this one. The Russians are very smart, so I think they already went to Cote d'Ivoire. They already talked to a lot of. They talked to Nigeria. They talked to a lot of these countries that are actually suffering from exactly from their actions. Um, and they're selling the idea that the Russians are on their side when it comes to jihadist threats, and and it's a very sinister way of doing it. But I think the I think this is the only way forward, I believe, for the United States.
Sure, sure, definitely, definitely. Um, Zineb, one last question. If you were to advise the U.S. administration, what would be your top three priorities for Africa engagement nowadays regarding all your analysis?
Oh, that's a very difficult one, but I do think that it's having, I think the first step, which I think that administration is doing, is really to change the relationship with Africa from aid to partnership, more of a business oriented I think partnerships are key because Africa is very rich in resources and critical minerals that are key for the future, that are key for emerging technologies, etc. And I think shifting that would be extremely important. The second, I think my second recommendation would be much more U.S. Led projects. The United States has a huge, a huge and very sophisticated sector, whether it's in mining, whether it's in manufacturing. There are many industries that can benefit from gaining access to strategic choke points in Africa, including in the Atlantic or elsewhere. And second recommendation would be for the United States to mobilize its industries to get much more involved in key sectors in Africa, but also in key strategic choke points, especially in the Atlantic. As you mentioned, for example, the Atlantic project that Morocco is leading in terms of the pipeline, that would be a fantastic project for U.S. companies to get involved in. A way to project some power, show that the United States is present. Also, a great way for the United States to secure strategic points so that the Russians and the Chinese and others do not get access to them. Because one of those scenarios where there's a beautiful and big project and the Chinese see it and they get involved, and it's a lose for the United States. Um, Lastly, and I think this is much more difficult, is the rise of jihadism in the Sahel is going to be catastrophic. I think Morocco is already in a weird situation because it's a transit hub where a lot of there's a lot of migration and refugees, and they stay in Morocco and then they go to Europe. But at some point it's going to overwhelm North African countries as well. And it's exactly the type of scenario that Putin wants to put pressure on the Europeans. Um, and so I think the countering, working on counterterrorism will be absolutely important. But as I said before, I think unless we know where the United States stands with Russia on this one, I think it's until then that we will know what type of things the United States can or cannot do.
Super, super. Zineb, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your really precious insights and analysis. You're welcome anytime for another discussion. And thank you for participating again in this episode of Echoes of Sahel.